Hi everyone, I'm back today with another festive tutorial. Today I'm going to show you how to make these cute felt letter decorations. These make a lovely gift and look great hung up on the Christmas tree. To make these you will need some felt in your chosen colour. I've made this first one here in this lovely cream colour, and then I made another one in this gingerbread felt colour which I really love and is what I'm going to use today. For the stitching I'm sticking with traditional colours, so I've got some red, white and green embroidery thread. Some other helpful bits, I've got a ruler which is going to help me draw some straight lines, and a heat erasable pen for adding some detail. I will pop a full list of what you need over in the description. So to start off my decoration, I've drawn out the shape of a T. This is the letter I'm stitching today using a heat erasable pen and a ruler to make sure I get some really nice straight lines. If you prefer to trace the shape, you could load up a letter on a screen and trace it from there. The first detail we're going to add is this candy cane stitching down the centre. So I'm going to draw some straight lines just onto my letter and then I'm going to stitch over the top of them. So I'm just going to draw the line along the top of the letter. There we go, that's looking nice and straight, and I'm just going to spin this around and then just draw the line down the other part of the letter. There we go, so now we're ready to start stitching. So we're going to use whip backstitch to create the candy cane effect, and I'm going to stitch the backstitch in white thread first of all. For this I'm going to be using 6 strands of thread as I really wanted to stand out against the dark background. And I'm just starting down here just at the bottom of the letter, and I'm just going to push my needle through the fabric, and then I'm going to push my needle back through to form that first backstitch. There we go, so that's stitch number 1. Now I'm going to go and stitch another one, so just pushing my needle up through the fabric. Now for this I'm going to keep my stitches as even as I can, so keeping them really nice in size. That's going to form a lovely base for when we whip the red thread through to create the candy cane effect. So here is the base for our whipped back stitch, so now we're ready to start whipping the red thread through. So for this I've got 4 strands of red thread, and again I'm just going to start here at the bottom of the T. So I'm pushing my needle through, and then I'm just going to slide my needle just under that first back stitch, and I'm just going to gently just pull that thread through. And now for the second stitch I'm going to do exactly the same, so just sliding that needle carefully just underneath the white thread, and then I'm just going to pull it through. There we go. So you can see there we've got that lovely rope effect starting to form. So now I'm just going to continue repeating this method until I stitch the whole letter. So now we've stitched our letter, it's time to add some greenery. So these little leaves here. For this we're going to use backstitch, and I'm going to be using 4 strands of green thread. So I'm just going to move this one out the way and just grabbing my felt. So I'm going to start down here again, just at the base of the letter. And I'm going to push my needle through the fabric. There we go, just pulling that thread all the way through, and I'm just going to connect it to the base of the letter and to create my first back stitch. So that's stitch number 1 added. Now just next to it I'm going to add a smaller stitch, so just like a little extra leaf attached to it. So just again pushing that needle through, and then I'm just going to join that up with the base of the stitch that I've just done, and that's going to create this little V, so just this little pair of leaves. So that's our first leaves added. So now I'm just going to work my way upwards, and I'm just going to add on another pair. So again, just using the exact same method. Backstitch is such a simple stitch and it looks so effective for this. I've used it in a lot of my pieces this Christmas. So here we go, just adding in another little stitch. There we go. So it's starting to form this really lovely pattern. So now I'm just going to keep going until I've added them all around the shape of the letter. So here are our finished leaves. So now we've just got one last bit of detail to add onto the letter itself. So it's going to be these tiny French knots just here. So for the French knots, I've got 3 strands of thread and I'm going to wrap it twice around the needle, just like this, to form some really little dainty knots. So let's add another one on. So I'm just going to push my needle up through the fabric, and then I'm going to wrap the thread twice around the needle and then push it back through just like this, and then pulling that thread all the way through. Now I'm just going to add some more, but the key here is to keep them quite evenly spaced out, as we don't want the stitching to be too crowded. So now we've finished stitching, it's time to cut out the shape of the letter. So I've got some lovely sharp scissors and I'm just going to cut around the outline very carefully. And I'm just going to be super careful as I approach the corners as well, just to make sure we get a really nice sharp finish. So here's our letter. I'm just going to tidy up the edges just to make sure they're lovely and straight. Now the next thing we're going to do is to cut out another piece of felt to back the letter. So this needs to be the same shape and size, so I'm going to use my letter as a template. So I'm just going to lay it on top and then very carefully cut around it. So here are my 2 pieces of felt. Now we're going to stitch them together. So I'm just going to layer them just like this, and I'm going to be using 2 strands of embroidery thread. So we're going to add a bow in just a moment. So I'm going to start stitching the bottom section first. So I'm going to start just here in the corner and I'm going to attach them using a running stitch. Now this is going to hold them together really nicely, but it also just adds a little bit of extra cozy detail. So for a nice tidy finish, try to keep your running stitches nice and even in size as you work your way around the letter. So now we've reached the top of the letter, it's time to add on the ribbon detail. So we're going to add it on just like I've done with this one. So I've got some lovely red ribbon and I'm just going to cut a length off, just using my thread snippers. And now I'm just going to fold it over in half and I'm just going to start tying a bow in the centre of the ribbon. I'm going to do this as tidily as I can. There we go. And I'm just going to give it a little adjust just to make sure I've got enough length on the tails of the ribbon. And I've got one just a little bit longer than the other, so I'm just going to give them a little trim just to make sure they're nice and even in length. So now I'm going to attach the bow. So I'm going to start just up here in the top right hand corner and I'm just going to tuck that first tail just inside my felt, just up to the edge. I'm going to make sure it's nice and straight, and then I'm just going to continue my running stitch round the edges, and that's just going to hold that ribbon securely in place. So now I'm going to attach the other end of the ribbon. I'm just going to make sure the tails are nice and even in length. This will make sure the decoration hangs nicely on the Christmas tree. I'm really happy with how the ribbon is looking, so now I'm going to continue with my running stitch around the remaining edges and then secure it on the back with a knot. So here is our finished felt letter decoration with all the pretty details. Will you be making any of these this Christmas? Let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. Happy stitching.